just make sure that you have a good understanding, I guess, of what your child or your student is going through, because if you do not, it's going to have an impact on their self-worth and their sense of being as well.
Welcome to Some Stutter Law, Newfoundland Labrador's first podcast about stuttering. My name is Greg O'Grady, and I am the chair of the Newfoundland Labrador Stuttering Association and a co-host of Some Stutter Law, Newfoundland Labrador's first podcast about stuttering, along with my co-host.
And my name is Caitlin Mayo. I'm a student and an aspiring speech-language pathologist, and I am Greg's co-host on Some Stutter Law podcast.
Some Stutter Law mission is dismantling and rebuilding stuttering. Let's start listening. Some Stutter Law mandate is, in the spirit of Newfoundland and Labrador humor, robust and frank interactive discussions, Some Stutter Law podcast aims to rebuild confidence and hope for today's and tomorrow's persons who happen to stutter by dismantling and stuttering myths, stigmas, stereotypes, and barriers.
The objectives of Some Stutter Law podcasts are supporting raising awareness and increasing understanding and acceptance of stuttering, providing people who stutter, their families, professionals, students, and the general public with current information, research, and resources about stuttering, and promoting the NLSA mission of advocacy and support for people who stutter.
On today's Some Stutter Law podcast, we would like to welcome Jon Garcin, and Jonathan is both a person who stutters and a speech language pathologist. So, Jonathan, would you like to share a little bit about your story as a person who stutters as well as a speech language pathologist?
Yeah, sure, Greg. That's not a problem. I developed a stutter when I was around 5 or 6 years old. It happened, I had some normal speech dysfluency prior to that. And when I went through a traumatic event as a child, my mother passed away. The stuttering became quite atypical. So I started repeating sounds. I started prolonging words. I started to block a little bit as well. So I went through all of my primary, elementary, and high school years with quite a severe stutter. And like yourself, Greg, I know that you mentioned this before, I was very much a covert stutterer. So I would avoid as much as I possibly could, as many speaking situations as I could, as many words as I found, as many words as I could that I knew I was going to stutter on. So I would just avoid everything. And then when I got to university, I decided that it would be a good idea to see a speech pathologist, because at that point I was doing a psychology degree and I was required to get up and speak. And there were courses that I actually dropped out of because I found out on the syllabus that I would have to get up and present in front of class. So those were the early years. Like if I got the syllabus and I was like, oh man, I had to present, there was a few courses I actually dropped. So I decided to see a speech language pathologist probably my fourth year of university. And the speech pathologist I saw, she was at Western Health in Corner Brook. She was an excellent SLP. She taught me some really good fluency enhancing techniques. She built up my confidence as a speaker, and she really encouraged me to get into the field of speech pathology. And her name is actually Corinne. She's a great SLP. I just want to put that out there because she's the reason why I decided to go this route in my life. That SLP and my honors supervisor as well, Peter Stewart, he kind of encouraged me to go ahead and go into SLP. So I just want to put his name in there as well.
Mm. John, like I'm wondering now, like in terms of your comfort level with your own stuttering, where are you now in terms of from 1 to 10? One is non-acceptance, 10 you're accepting. What number would you give yourself?
1 is non-acceptance and 10 is accepting. Well,
Correct.
let's um, let's go back probably 10 years or so. Prior to starting my graduate program, I would put that at about a 4 or 5. I was nowhere near acceptance. I would be about an 8 right now. I'm almost there, but some days I get up and I'm like, man, this is terrible. I haven't totally accepted it quite yet. And I was talking to one of my mentors from graduate school. He's also a male SLP who stutters. I was chatting with him earlier on this week. I sent him an email, and he asked me, he said, John, like, what works for you now? Like, in terms of your fluency, like, have you accepted it? Do you use your techniques? And I said, I do. I still use my techniques. I haven't fully accepted it, but if I'm getting some much needed R&R, I find my fluency you know, is excellent, and I'm towards that acceptance. It all depends on the day too, Greg. Some days I wake up and I don't feel like I fully accepted it, and other days I wake up and I fully accepted it. So that's why I put it at an 8. Now this SLP who I had as a mentor, he's 10 now. You know, like he's dealt with disfluency for most of his life, and he doesn't really apply the techniques much anymore. Uh, he doesn't really have the emotions around the stuttering. He just said, so much needed R&R, and I'm great. I feel great with it. I feel 100%. So yeah, but for me, Greg, it all depends
And
on the day. It all depends on the day. Like some days I'm a 5, some days I'm a 10. So if you go in between, it's like a 7 or an 8.
I'm also knowledgeable with regards to the anxiety level. Where would you score yourself, or is it the same as the fluid? It all depends on the day to day anxiety associated with stuttering.
Like I feel like I have more probably general anxiety than most people do. I would say that my anxiety level, regardless of if I'm required to get up and present, or regardless if I'm required to do a podcast, any given day is, it's up there. I don't know where it would be, but I always feel this heightened level of anxiety. And I feel like it is a result of the stutter and having to deal with it for so many years. That's why I got this constant level of anxiety, even if I'm not required to get up there and speak. It's all there. It's there, right? It's up there every day. My wife keeps telling me just to calm down sometimes, right? she, regardless, because I get on her nerves anyway. But she's always telling me to calm down, John. Like your brain, you're running a mile a minute. Your brain is running a mile a minute. It's constantly going. You don't stop. Like you're always, and that's my anxiety. It's my anxiety. You know, it's the anxiety that I've had to deal with as a result of this. I know it is. Because it was a
And it's
constant thing,
interesting.
Greg. It was a constant thing with my friends. Like I go back to my childhood and I think about the amount of anxiety that I felt every single day getting up and, okay, I need to be fluent around my friends. What am I going to do today? I don't have any techniques. I'm just going to avoid as much as I can. Okay. I'm just going to avoid. And hopefully they're not going to choose me to talk. Hopefully no one's going to talk to me. So that's where it came from, you know? And that's where I am now. It's not quite as the anxiety level isn't quite as high as what it used to be, but it's still there. The anxiety is still there.
Like it's interesting, Jonathan. For some reason or another, I've been asking myself the question within the last few days. What does it feel like? I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask Caitlin the same question. What does it feel like to feel normal? In terms of like we as we have a normal routine. We get up in the morning, we make ourselves coffee, breakfast, go to work, but there's always this angst, and you alluded to this earlier, that there's always this underlying general anxiety. So how would you feel? Do you agree with that, John? That affects in terms of someone's feeling normal, whatever normal is. What was your thoughts about that? What does it feel like to be normal as a person who stutters?
Greg, I don't know if I know what it feels like to be normal as a person who stutters. That's the thing. Right? I don't, as a person who stutters, what it means to be normal. I don't, if I had that, thing is, like, I don't know, Greg, if I would want to get up tomorrow and just magically be a person who does not stutter. I don't know if I would want that, but I think being a person who does not stutter would be normal to me. Right? I don't know. Right? I would feel, I haven't felt normal. I don't know what it's like to feel normal, because I get up every day and I have to monitor my speech constantly. Still, I'm still doing it, right? After all these years, to be normal as a person who stutters, I feel, Greg, would be accepting your stutter, which I'm not 100% there yet, right? And I do have that level of anxiety. And Greg, I'm sure you feel kind of the same way as me. Do you? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, John, because there's just this constant cloud over your head. You know what I mean? And because I mean, there's, well, and this is the problem. Like when I have my good days of being like I'm able to manage my stuttering, that causes anxiety as well because I'm not used to that. So I love so really it's like a double-edged sword. We don't know if we're normal or not normal.
Right.
So Caitlin, as a non-stutterer, what's your definition of feeling normal?
I don't know if I have a definition. I mean, in terms of my speech, I'm normal, I guess, but I don't think normal exists. There's I don't even know how to describe it. There's no real normal. There's norms that people put in place, but I don't know that that's normal. I don't know.
So when you get up in the morning, Caitlin, you have no anxiety about answering the telephones or talking to people, going to
Um,
meetings, introducing yourself, or
I
no?
mean, I'm probably not the best person to ask this question to, because though I don't have any sort of fluency disorder, communication disorder, anything like that, I've had my own experiences with like anxiety disorders and social anxiety disorders. So I've also had those fears and those anxieties, not related to my speech, but just in general. But I also don't know what it feels like to wake up and not be afraid to talk on the phone or introduce myself, but for different reasons. So there really is no normal. Everybody's just struggling the same way, but in different ways. I don't know. It's a difficult concept to try and conceptualize.
That definitely, Caitlin. I mean, so I mean, this is a question that popped in my mind recently, and I thought, well, I'll start asking the question. And I mean, from a person who stutters perspective, Now, John, like you had mentioned earlier that you had taken the Fluency Shaping Program, and as a client. Now, just to let you know, just let our listeners know, John went back as an SLP to take the Fluency Shaping Program, the Certification Fluency Plus program through the Speech and Stuttering Institute. So, John, would you like to share a little bit about this program that you recently uh, graduate, graduated from?
Right. Yeah. So it was a three-day workshop offered through the SSI, and it was it was for school age students who stutter. And I just want to say that I really enjoyed the program. There were a variety of targets that the instructor taught us. I forget her name now, but she was excellent. Greg, not sure if you know her name. Do you? Marcy is her name. Is that right?
No, Marnie.
Marnie, not Mercy. Marnie,
Marnie.
right?
Yeah.
So we actually had some great hands-on experience with a variety of fluency targets, and I really liked the way that the targets progressed. Right, I really enjoyed that, and I like how there was also an emphasis on, the emotions of a person who stutters as well. The program really looks at the things that are underneath the iceberg that you can't see, in addition to giving clients those fluency shaping techniques as well. So I just want to say that I absolutely loved the program, and I'm going to implement this with some of my school age students who stutter next year for sure.
And I mean, there was 17 speech language pathologists from our province that actually uh, took the program last month, and this is a big step for for bringing a specialized speech therapy program to our province. And I mean, so this is a big step. Wouldn't you agree, John?
It is, yeah, it's certainly a huge step. And I mean, actually have a program in your toolkit as well, that you could you can actually like sequentially work through with students who stutter is great. I mean, the only program per se that I'm trained in, other than the fluency info that I learned in grad school. And I just want to say that I absolutely love the program. The course was excellent.
Yeah, taking the program as a person who stutters as a client, and now taking the program and being certified in the program as a professional SLP, has it changed your perspective anything about the Fluency Plus program?
Fluency Plus, it has changed my perspective, I guess, about the way, or I guess about the sequence I apply targets with my students. I'm trying to think now. It's to actually have a program that you're able to work through with a student is a great thing. Is a great thing, right? You don't just give the child a technique and expect them to master it initially, right? You build up a skill in that one particular target, which is great. I don't know if I answered the question. What was the question again, Greg?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you like taking the program as a person who stutters, and
Right.
now taking the program and being certified in the program as a professional SLP.
Right,
Is
no,
there
it's great because
perspective
I've actually,
change?
oh, okay, yeah, so I missed that. I'm sorry about that. So it's great because I'm actually using some of the techniques that I've learned from the program to enhance my own fluency as well, Greg. And I've actually I've tried some of the techniques with my students as well. Like I haven't really implemented the program per se, but I've taken various things out of the program and I've used them with my students. Now, if I have a fresh student next year with a moderate to severe fluency disorder, then I'm going to work. I'm going to go. I'm going to work in a sequential fashion. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go from start to finish with regards to the program. That's the plan. I don't feel like I really have as much time as I would like now because I have 3 more months left, right? June is around the corner. So I get some fresh students in next year, then I'm going to start them off with that.
So, Caitlin, do you have any questions now for Jonathan?
Um, Gosh, there's so many I could ask. I guess just as somebody who's very well versed in the experiences of people who stutter and has an SLP and everything like that, what's like one thing you would want to tell the public about stuttering?
One thing I want to tell the public about stuttering, I would like to say that I guess depending on the age of the child, I mean, child is 8 or 9 years old, for example, has a moderate to severe stutter. I would like to tell the public that it is a lifelong experience. Like myself and Greg, we're still going through it every single day. I haven't fully accepted it yet. Greg is not entirely there yet either, right, Greg? I want to tell them that it is a lifelong
So
experience,
true, so true.
right? It is a lifelong experience, and stuttering does have negative consequences, but a lot of like positives come out of it as well. Like a positive being for myself. I went off to grad school and I decided to help out other students or other kids who stutter, who have a fluency issue. So, it's lifelong. Just make sure that you have a good understanding, I guess, of what your child or your student is going through, because if you do not, it's going to have an impact on their self-worth and their sense of being as well.
So, Jonathan, as a person who stutters and who's married, do you feel that stuttering can can affect your relationship, or do you feel that spouses, significant others, fully understand the severity of stuttering?
Now, Greg, that's a really excellent question, and I'm finding myself, I'm stuttering more now than I would around my wife because we're doing this podcast. And I told myself this morning that I would just let it go because I want everyone to see or to hear, what the real Jon Garcin is like. Now, when I go upstairs and I chat with my wife, do I use fluency enhancing techniques from time to time? Yes, I do. So does my wife have a true understanding, I guess, of what's going on with my stuttering every day? She probably doesn't. Right? So, I mean, how has it affected our relationship anyway? Other than getting my wife to ask for a bagel at the Tim Hortons drive-through from time to time, no, it hasn't. Because I've done that on a few occasions. Oh man, I still do it. And I mentioned this before, Greg. This is the bagel analogy, and I still do this when I go through the drive-through. I'll ask for, if I go to Tim Hortons, for example, can I have a large coffee with 2 sugar, 1 cream? And can I have a toasted everything bagel with butter? I always struggle with those hard B's, that B, right? I always struggle with that B. So there have been occasions where I asked my wife to finish it off for me. And I'm a speech pathologist and a person who stutters because I just could not deal with it at that moment. I'll say, Victoria, can you please ask for the bagel? So other than that, really, it hasn't affected us. And Victoria is she's such a great spouse. She understands what I go through. And Greg, she actually went to Mount Pearl. She went to our first stuttering conference last year. Was it last year or the year before now? I can't remember. 2000, when
2019, John. It's amazing.
And she
2019.
Right. And as a person who does not stutter, Greg, she thought it was a very heartwarming experience. Shed a few tears during it as well. It really touched her. And I think that has actually helped her understand me as a person and as a person who stutters a little more. So, right. That's exposure.
I'm laughing to myself, Jonathan, because when you're talking about the B sound, the fricative sound in bagel.
Yeah.
I hate your name, Jonathan, because I've been so stuttering on the J,
Yeah.
Jonathan. And it's interesting. I'm finding now that I've also taken the Fluency Plus program as a client. I find doing this podcast as well has been quite challenging because I've always been trying to hide my stuttering. And this is, and it's so ironic. If I've been trying to hide my stuttering on some stutter podcast, something's not right here. You know what I mean? but I find this is very challenging as well because I'm letting my stuttering come out as well. And it's a whole mindset. It really is.
It is a whole mindset. I feel like I've noticed you stutter a little more as well, Greg, because you just want to let it go as well, and you want others who hear this to understand who the real Greg O'Grady is. This is the real Jon Garcin. I'm not using my fluency enhancing techniques right now. I'm letting it go. It is what it is. I'm a person who stutters, and I wanted to do that today.
And Jonathan, it's so true. And this is what I've been doing since the podcast started. And we were so unusual, and it feels so uncomfortable because I'm so used to trying to be covert or trying to hide my stuttering. But anyhow, but it's true. I mean, it's all part of the journey. All part of the journey. Jonathan, I'm wondering now, like working, working within the school system. What other, what are your challenges, if any, with you working with your clientele, your students and parents? And are there any challenges within the system that makes your life easier as an SLP or causes a little bit of a challenge servicing your clients?
Right. So I guess in terms of helping the kids who stutter, I feel like I have like an innate understanding, I guess, of fluency because I dealt with it. I went through it during the primary and elementary years. So I kind of understand what they're going through. I understand their frustrations with their speech, those sorts of things. So I feel like, the fact that I have a speech, I know we referred to this last time, the fact that I have a speech difference and not an impediment. Sorry, I feel like I can really help those kids out. In terms of it being a challenge, in terms of my disfluency being a challenge, I never stutter around the kids. I don't know what it is. I mean, I won't even use the fluency enhancing techniques around my students. I just don't stutter because I know they're like me. They either have an articulation disorder, they have a fluency disorder, or they have a language impairment. So I know that those kids are struggling as well. And, I feel like, I'm looking at myself sometimes, right? Because I went through the exact same thing. And I try my best to see them weekly, whether that is direct in the school, in person, or via Skype.
And how do you find, you know, providing therapy via social media like Skype? Do you find it's a challenge or?
Yeah, it can be a challenge, especially with the young kids. The children in grade one. Most times they just want to, especially like I got really good at it last year when I was doing therapy online, and some kids will just take the iPad or whatever device they're using and give you a guided tour of their house rather than doing speech therapy. So, right. So depending on the age, it has been a bit of a struggle, but you need to be as creative as you possibly can with these kids to keep them engaged. If you're not creative and on your toes all the time online, it's just not going to work, right? So I've been as creative as I could possibly be over the past year or so doing the online therapy. Like I've structured articulation activities around scavenger hunts. I played, like Simon Says. I've been doing like little physical activities in between articulation drills. So just to keep their brains going and their minds going. So it's worked out well. But certainly there has been a challenge. It has been a challenge in terms of sometimes not getting the audio correctly from their side, or I'll get a video lag. But I mean, it works with, I would say, most kids. One-on-one is great. Groups, not so much, and you can't really do groups online. I haven't tried it, but I don't think I would. Just way too many variables to consider, right? When you have groups.
Like in terms of the parents now, John, how are you as a speech language pathologist involving and supporting the parents in the treatment of your students?
Right. So yeah. So in terms, so if you take a child with a fluency disorder, for example, especially if that child is quite young, in kindergarten, grade one, you have to take the home environment into consideration as well. So I will reach out to parents of children who stutter as much as I can, and I guess provide them with some activities that they can do at home, and some environmental modifications as well. Uh, I'll tell them to slow down around their kids to facilitate fluency, like slow their speech rate down, comment more than quick question. And I know that we're all guilty of this here on the island. Like we talk really fast, extremely fast. So telling parents to kind of slow their speech rate around their kids is pretty tough, right? It's really tough, and asking them to comment more. And we also question here in Newfoundland a lot more than we comment, right? We're always asking questions. So, you know, some environmental modification techniques, in addition to really getting the parents to understand what it's like to have a stutter, right?
And in terms with working with the teachers, because I assume that when you're working with a student who stutters, the parents who stutters, the teachers, how do you involve the teachers in this therapeutic relationship?
Well, I'll approach. I've done this with a couple of teachers in the past. If the teacher has a student who stutters in the classroom, you really want to cut down on the amount of, I guess, in-class demands on that student. So in terms of asking the student a question in class, that student may not want to be asked a question in class. So I would consult with that student first to see if that is okay, if he feels or he or she feels okay being asked a question in class, in the classroom environment, because that in itself creates a lot of anxiety for that student if they know that they're going to be asked a question every now and then. So I will then approach that teacher and say, you know, like, so and so probably doesn't want to be asked a question in the context of the classroom. Is there anything else that we can do to assess their understanding, right, of what's going on in this course? I'll do that, and I guess I'll go over the same tips that I would go through with a parent. You know, slowing the rate of speech, just trying to you know, cut down on those in-class demands on that student.
And John, like in terms of providing supports to students, what do you think that do you can you recommend any supports that you feel should be in included in the education system for students who stutters? Is there any uh, the deficits at the moment that you can think of?
Yeah, so I know that, Greg, that we talk about the iceberg quite a bit, yourself and I, and we talk about all those negative emotions that those students feel, those sorts of things. And I know that we have the support group with the NLSA. So it may not, depending on the student's age, it may not be appropriate for that student to go to the support group, but the parent of that student could potentially go to the support group. I mean, outside of providing the direct therapy and dealing with the parents and the teachers in school, you know, we also have that support group thanks to the NLSA. So I have actually directed parents to the support group in the past. Some of them have expressed interest. So, you know, there may be a rural support group in the future, right? If I get enough parents and if I get enough older students who are interested in such a group, you know, the high school students, or, you know.
And I'm wondering, Jonathan, if you can share, are there any concerns with continuing treatment during gaps like breaks, like Easter breaks, school breaks during the summer? Do you feel that there is a challenge there? There's a need that should be met, and does that affect the treatment, the continuation of the treatment?
In terms of the break, I know that the health care authorities, they also have treatment blocks, and they have breaks actually set into it's actually planned into the treatment block. So the way I see it is, you know, we do have a summer vacation, and if you're dealing with a student who stutters, then you can potentially give them some activities to complete over the summer, along, you know, with the parents. Like I just feel that, you know, like the healthcare authorities, they also have the breaks put in there as well for those students. I don't feel like a break would be that detrimental to fluency from a personal standpoint. As long as you know the parents are completing some of those activities at home with that student, you know, you provide them with a workbook of some sort to, with the activities in the workbook, and they're completing them at home, I feel like it'll be okay. Or for example, you're dealing with an older student and you want that student to complete some telephone activities over the summer using their fluency enhancing techniques, right? That might be a good idea if they're at that point in the therapy where they're able to do that. So you would, you know, you would do up activity book for that student. They would go home, they would complete those activities, and then you would make them aware. You know, you would say, okay, I want you to use these techniques as much as you possibly can over the summer, around your friends, in person, maybe on the phone. You can rate yourself, you know, on a scale from 1 to 10. How well did you apply the blending technique during your telephone chat, right? And they can rate it. Like there's a variety of things that you can do during those breaks for those students.
Like your student, your students that you work with, Jonathan. Now they're in elementary or high school. Oh no, and the reason why I'm asking is, like, is there any difficulty with transitioning from, like, say, um, elementary to high school? You know what I mean? Is there, when you're working with a student?
Yes, I mean, if you're dealing with a fluency student, then that student would continue to receive direct support from, you know, that student would continue to receive that support in high school, and most students would actually continue to receive that support. It all depends on what you're dealing with, I guess. But in the case of a fluency disorder, that student would continue to receive direct support from the SLP.
And so you would meet with, with the parent, with the parent and the new SLP teachers, just to make this transition easier.
Yes, yeah. Yes, I certainly would. In terms of a fluency disorder, yes, I would. I would have a conversation with the parents, and I would talk to the teacher as well to ensure that the transition is smooth to high school.
I mean, this is great support, Jonathan. Excellent support. Caitlin, I'm wondering if you have some questions for Jonathan.
Lots. I kind of want to flip back to like your personal experience as a person who stutters. What I'm wondering is like, what was your graduate school experience like? Like, we talk a lot about like disclosing your stutter to people or not, like being a covert or over stutter and things like that. What was that like in a graduate speech language pathology program?
Well, I felt like my graduate school experience was great. I made a lot of great friends, and you know, I had to get up there and present in front of class many times, and you know, we all just used to have a good laugh, right? You know, like I disclosed it at the beginning of the year. You know, my name is Jon Garcin. I'm a person who stutters, and I mean, I felt like my graduate school experience was probably my best experience as a person who stutters. I didn't really, and I felt like that's where I really started to gain my confidence in graduate school. Prior to that, not so much. Not so much in university. As an undergrad, a lot of students really didn't understand that much about my speech issue, I guess. And prior to that, there was a lot of harassment and bullying, you know, like in high school, primary, elementary. I can't say I had a really good school experience per se with the bullying and the teasing and stuff like that. But in terms of grad school, I thought it was great. I loved it. I loved every second of graduate school. And that's where I really, And I really found out that, you know, I was meant to be an SLP.
And another question, sort of related, sort of not, as like someone who's looking to become an SLP, and there's plenty of people out there who are SLPs and want to be able to provide services for people who stutter. Obviously, we can't do it as well as someone who's lived that experience, but what advice would you have as somebody who's been through the speech therapy and someone who's provided it as well? What advice would you have for potential future SLPs?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I don't know. I guess the best thing for potential future SLPs in terms of dealing with kids who stutter is to actually sit in on some of these support group meetings that the NLSA has, or other organizations across Canada, right? I feel like I have learned a ton of new info from the people in the support group. They've certainly expanded my understanding of speech disfluency and its effects on, you know, the emotional state of a person, those sorts of things, like the lower part of the iceberg, the stuff that's on the bottom. You just need to expose yourself to as many people who stutter as you possibly can, and just that's the only way you're going to get a true understanding of what it feels like to be a person who stutters, or a person with a communication disorder as well, right? So that extends into that realm as well. You know, if you want to get a good understanding of aphasia, then you would probably want to be around people who have lived it or who are going through it still. You know, that extends into the other realms. That extends into the other domains, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Treating a whole person, not just the disorder.
Whole person. That's, yeah, for sure, right? Just don't treat the stutter. I don't advocate for a purely like fluency shaping program, because I don't feel like it works. I really don't feel like it works, right? Because you have all those emotions that are underneath that iceberg that you have not dealt with. But okay, you've shaped a person's speech so they're more fluent, but that person probably still feels like crap. Right? Like I did. I went through the shaping and stuff at one point, and it didn't really work for me that much. This was prior to me seeing the SLP. At Western Health, I took a shaping program, and it wasn't that great. You know, like, okay, so I learned how to shape my speech so that I could be more fluent, right? But all those emotions were still there. I still felt like crap all the time. I didn't know how to deal with it. You know, I wasn't a confident guy, but, you know, I was here and I had all my techniques. Great, that's amazing. I can be fluent when I want to be, but I'm still a bit of a pessimist. I just feel terrible all the time, you know. And I'm stuttering quite freely here today. I'm not using my fluency enhancing techniques as I usually do. And this is what I wanted to do this morning. I just want to show everyone that, you know, I do have a stutter. I'm not controlling it in any way today. I'm slowing my speech rate down a little tiny bit, but I'm also letting those disfluencies go a little bit. And you see a little bit of that eye twitching going on there. That's what I do usually. That's a famous Jon Garcin stuttering thing to do.
Well, if Caitlin has no more questions, John, do you have any questions for us now? To give you an opportunity to ask us questions.
Opportunity to ask you guys questions. I'm being put on the spot here now. Greg, I guess, I don't know if you went into this before, but prior to receiving speech therapy, how severe was your stutter? And what primary symptoms did you express? Were you more of a blocker or a sound repeater, or, you know, because I'm not entirely sure. I know that you do repeat sounds. You're a lot like myself, and you do block from time to time, but I haven't. Yeah.
Okay. John, I mean, I've always had a severe stuttering problem, and but it's interesting when I was growing up in Gander, Newfoundland, and the various places we live. I've always was a very I was always stayed in the corner, so I knew something was wrong, but I didn't talk, so I always tried to hide and avoid talking. But but to give an example of the severity of my stuttering, I remember when I first moved away from home. I mean, so being out in the real world, I could not hide my stuttering, and so I remember when when people used to ask me what my name is, for example, I used to say I had this habit of starting off my stuttering with I used to reach up, let's say John, you asked me what my name was. I would look up at the ceiling, point my hand up at the ceiling, and say, "Look now, look 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 left, look now, look now." And can you imagine the looks that I got just to get one word out?
Right.
So to answer your question, it was a really severe stuttering, and compared to then and even now, sort of thing, there's no comparison.
Right. Yeah, that sounds pretty rough, Greg. Yeah. Um, I guess Caitlin, I have a question to ask you as well. I know that you're interested in going into the field of SLP. Are there certain groups or populations who you would like to work more with or exclusively with? And do you want to work in healthcare or do you want to work with the school system?
It's a good question. I definitely think that I want to work more so with children and definitely more so in the realm of like speech disorders, communication disorders. I'm not big into the dysphagia or swallowing, anything like that.
Yeah,
And I think, yeah, I think right off the bat, I'd like to work in the school system, but I have big dreams of getting my master's in counseling as well and opening a practice where I can apply both speech techniques and counseling techniques and kind of do kind of a whole collaborative thing, treating primarily people who stutter, people with fluency disorders, but just anybody in general, children with communication disorders.
Wow, I mean that's great, and that's where you need to be, especially if you're dealing with a person who stutters as well, because like I'm not afraid to talk about my mental health either. But I mean, I did see a counselor at one point in my life because I was struggling with quite a bit of anxiety as a result of my speech impediment. So I mean, I think that's where it needs to be, and that's why the NLSA has a support group, right, Greg, to help people who stutter work through these emotions as well. So the fact that you want to be an SLP and a counselor is great. I mean, I feel like you'll do a great job with those who stutter. So awesome.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan. Really appreciate it. And like I'm finding that we learn so much. Caitlin and I learned so much from from the various guests on our podcast. It's amazing how much we do not know about stuttering, and when we're continuously learning, just listening to people's who stutters lived experiences, and non-stutterers as well. Then, okay, thanks a lot, Jonathan. Take care
No
now.
problem. You guys have a good day.
Some Stutter La, Newfoundland and Labrador's first podcast about stuttering, has so much to talk about. Let's start listening.
This has been an episode of Some Stutter La, Newfoundland and Labrador's first podcast about stuttering. Some Stutter La is hosted and produced by Greg O'Grady, Caitlin Mayo, Dr. Paul Decker, and Luca Dino. Some Stutter La is available on Anchor, Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. To ask a question, send us a comment or suggestion, or just get in touch. Find us online at Some Stutter Podcast on Instagram or Some Stutter La Pod on Facebook. Thank you for listening.